G'day everybody! How's it going this week? Well, when I started this channel back in 2015 or 2016, I didn't always want to cover furry news. I wanted to cover news that I felt was very important to cover for the day, and right now I feel like I need to cover a particular topic that is important to me, and I knew I was not going to do like hot takes as it was, but basically I needed to cover this because when I read the news this Saturday morning, I got really sort of perturbed, more so than I usually do with the news, and so basically I have to talk about this recent thing about the Hurricane Dorian. It's been colloquially called SharpieGate. I hate the gate suffix. I could do a whole other video on that. I really dislike the gate suffix because it's been used to such a degree at this point that I don't really like to acknowledge it. But basically the concept is that Donald Trump made a prediction about the Hurricane Dorian on September 1st, on Sunday, last Sunday basically. And this is the tweet that he had sent out. This tweet about basically where the hurricane was going to hit. So basically this was taken on the Sunday when the hurricane was over the Bahamas. It's like, in addition to Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama will be most likely to be hit much worse, harder than anticipated. Looking the one of the hardest hurricanes ever. Already Category 5. Be careful. God bless everyone. There's just a lot of inaccuracies in this tweet. One of the biggest hurricanes that I recall hearing about as far as devastation to the United States was obviously Katrina is one of them. Hugo is also one of the big ones. And one was called, I believe it's Alexander. That was in 1993. Or it's Andrew. It might have been Andrew. It's an A name. And that one was only a Category 3 that caused a lot of devastation to Florida. So that America has been hit by a lot of hard hurricanes. I don't think Dorian is one of the biggest ones ever. You would have to go back and look at the history on that. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about, obviously, the prediction of it hitting Alabama. And the reason this has become a big kerfluffle, as opposed to just like, oh, Donald Trump being Donald Trump, is that the political waves that have sort of been sent through the weather services of the United States of America over this tweet. Because the National Weather Service in Alabama had something to say about this tweet almost basically right away. And that was, Alabama will not see any impacts from Dorian. We repeat, no impacts from Hurricane Dorian will be felt across Alabama. The system will remain too far east. So basically, the National Weather Service in Birmingham decided, we're going to, wait, no, we're not going to let this tweet up here make people misconstrue that the hurricane's going to hit Alabama strongly, as it seems to indicate. Basically, here are the words he used: most likely be hit much harder than anticipated. Alabama will be hit much harder than anticipated. That is the statement that is made. Most likely. So when we're defining the words most likely, those are what are called weasel words, right? In the news business, in any business, most likely are terms that are called weasel words. They're words that you weasel things in. They're emotion, they're kind of feely. They don't have like much scientific merit to them. They're words that politicians use a lot, and people in maybe blog-style newspapers will use a lot. And I use them every once in a while. Everyone uses weasel words when they don't quite have a good grasp on the number, but if they are using those words, they should have at least some sort of belief on that. Now, people can question those words whenever they see them, but at the most time, they're not going to, because there's certain things that are worth fighting and there's certain things that are not. People are going to do this. Now, the most likely here, though, these weasel words, these should be fought. And the reason why they should be fought is the term most likely. What do you interpret that as meaning? To me, it means at least greater than 50%. If somebody is saying something will most likely happen, it should be greater than 50%, correct? That's more than half the time, right? If we're talking about the realm of probabilities, right? And Donald Trump should be well familiar with the realm of probabilities. He ran casinos, for crying out loud, right? He should know what probabilities are. The House should know what the probabilities are for people winning things. And they should probably stack things into the House's favor so that they make more money than they lose, right? Don't make it impossible for somebody to win, but make it less than likely, right? Not most likely. It'll be most likely that the House wins, right? You want it to be most likely that the House wins the hand, right? So we'll put a pin on the words most likely right here. So the reason this is the catalyst that kind of broke my camel's back on wanting to cover this as opposed to furry topics this week, it was that this Saturday morning, it was released that there was a third party that sort of entered this discussion, and that was the NOAA, which is the institute that sort of works together with the National Weather Service to have experiences on the climate and figuring that out to sort of determine weather patterns and whatnot. I'm not a professional in understanding exactly what each of these institutions' exact roles are, but basically the NOAA and the NWS basically work together in most cases. What we have here is a cheat by a man named James Spann. And apparently this guy is a big weatherman in Alabama. So you have your local weatherman, right? That you will really know. In upstate New York and central New York area, you have like your Wayne Mahars. And obviously I don't know if that guy's retired yet or not. I'm old. I haven't watched like the local weather in a long time, unfortunately, due to, the way information is sort of changing. And I don't live in that area anymore. But this guy, basically James Spann, who is a known weatherman in Alabama, is coming to the defense of the National Weather Service from the NOAA, who released a statement saying that, basically sort of saying that the Donald Trump here should be defended for his interpretations of the situation. He says, from Wednesday, August 28th through Monday, September 2nd, the information provided by the NOAA and the National Hurricane Center to President Trump and the wider public demonstrated that tropical storm force winds from hurricane Dorian could impact Alabama. So could, once again, is sort of a weasel word, but could is not more than likely, right? You have to understand, it's like if Donald Trump said more than likely, NOAA said could. Could is even more of a weasel word than more than likely, because could mean anything. Could mean anything. It depends on what your definition of could is, and is, and all this stuff. So let's keep going. Anyways, this clearly demonstrates is hurricane advisories number 15 through 41, which can be reviewed at the following link. Don't worry, we will go through that link and make a big old reading of it, and this is going to be a big thing. At the end of this video, I promise you two things. Number one, the person who's sitting on the NOAA communications board is not a good lawyer, because he basically provided evidence as to why Donald Trump's tweet is extremely wrong, and we're going to go over that. Number two, at the end of this video, you will be more qualified to head the NOAA than the person who's made this communication for the NOAA. I guarantee you that. And why am I qualified to make such things? Well, I'm not James Spann for crying out loud. I'm certainly not. But I can tell you this. I took a class in weather. All right? I was looking for this thing the whole time. Where did it go? Where did it go? Well, I can't find it. But I have a thing. I went to college in Oswego State, all right? I've left my thing somewhere. I can't remember. Oh, it's all the way over there. I think that's all the way over there. I'm going to detach my tail for a second. Hold on. Let me see. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Why did I put it all the way over here? Ah! I said I had it ready to go, and then I put it on the desk over there. So, I went to class in Oswego State, all right? I'm a bachelor. I graduated with a bachelor's degree at Oswego State, which is an upstate New York college that is very well known for its weather program, because it's the school that Al Roker went to. You know, that guy from the Today Show. They had gastric bypass surgery and stuff like that. You can even go to Oswego State or Oswego and get the Al Roker special from a local sub shop. Apparently, Al Roker liked a particular sort of sub sandwich. Of course, my degree here is not in weather. It's in apparently it's in computer science, bachelor's of computer science, and not in weather. And I took the class 10 years ago, but I do know how to read a weather map, because I took one of those courses. Like in college, you have to take sort of those side courses of like that aren't necessarily related to your major. And for a computer scientist, it's actually extremely useful. Not quite the humanities and all that, but obviously humanities could be useful. Understanding that there's actual people behind your computers and using your computers, and they have emotions and histories, and you should probably take that into consideration. It doesn't hurt. It never hurts. But you could take other technical sort of courses as well as sort of your sort of side things. And I took an intro to weather course. I know what a derecho is. And we're talking about a derecho today. Speaking of blowhards, right? Let's talk about this tweet. We're talking about probability. So, when you're talking about more than likely, right? You're saying greater than 50%. So I have a die here. It's going to be hard to see because I have a hand pause on. But more than 50%. So when you have one die, you have one dice, right? We're going to talk about some probabilities. If you want to roll a 1, say I'm saying, if we can agree that when I say more than likely, right, that it means if I say, if you roll this die right here in my hand, if you roll, you are more than likely to roll a 3, 4, 5, or a 6. Then you are more than likely to roll a 3, 4, 5, or 6. That is an accurate statement, right? That you say, yeah, of course, you're more likely to roll a 3, 4, 5, or 6 than you are a 1 or a 2. All right. What if I said you are more than likely to roll a 1 when you roll this die? Man, these paws don't really work very well with this camera thing. So you roll a 1, right? What if I told you, if you roll this die, you are more than likely to roll a 1? Well, you would say you're insane. What is the probability of rolling a 1 on a 6-sided die? It is 16.666%. All right? Keep that statistic in mind as we move through the evidence that was provided by the NOAA. All right? So we are going to do that right now. So what was that evidence that was provided by the NOAA? Well, it was a link to a website under which there was a bunch of time shots of the probability of the Hurricane Dorian going across multiple different things. And so we are going to show you this right now. It's going to take up most of the screen, which is good because I want you to be able to read it instead of seeing my face. So they took basically the time that they started tracking the Hurricane Dorian all the way up to the most recent thing as of this time. As you watch the map go, it's very pretty and very hypnotic to look at, and there's a lot of pretty colors there. But let's take the time to read what these pretty colors mean and what this whole map is talking about. So if you look at the very top of the thing, it gives you its title, which is Tropical Storm Force Winds Probabilities. So this map is telling you that this is about probability. This is not about anything else. It's not about intensity. It's not about that. Now, this is where my criticism of these kind of maps come in, of these kind of probability maps, is because the layman who's sort of exposed to these kind of maps, when they see purple and green and all that stuff, they think of intensity, right? They think of systems impacting things like now. They think of like Doppler radars and other things like that. So if a layman is looking at this thing and they just look at the map without looking at any of the information being provided, they might think that Alabama was being impacted by Durain this whole time, particularly at the edges of there, right? And of course, Donald Trump likes Alabama more than any other place because they voted for him. But that's speculation. It might be just that he was ignorant of the time, right? So why was he ignorant of this? So let's continue reading, right? So it indicates that this is for 5 days' time, and they take 4 snapshots at 6-hour intervals: 2 a.m., 8 a.m., 2 p.m., and 8 p.m. Every day they're tracking this thing. They take 6-hour interval shots, and they make predictions of this at 6-hour intervals. There is a lot of cool information that you can kind of get for this that is not and it's sort of how it's designed. At the same time, it's sort of cool in this way, like that maps like this are kind of cool. Like they're scientifically nerdy. Like you get like a little bit of a nerd out because it's like it's providing you a lot of information, but you have to be able to read that information. Like as you're watching it go, you could kind of see the vector under which it's predicted to travel. That's sort of one of the big usefuls. It also sort of gives a sort of assessment of pseudo damage that's expected over the past 5 days, right? So you kind of have that combination of things. You know, you can see the direction of travel. It's pretty fast. As we all know, or people who've been tracking this hurricane know, Durain slowed down over the Bahamas to almost a crawl. And that's sort of indicated as the map sort of zooms in when it hits the Durain thing, because the 5-day forecast is it's not going to move very far at a certain point, but then it accelerates again as it moves up the east coast of the United States. And plus, not only does it accelerate, but the distances between latitude as you move away from the equator on this style of map increases in distance. So even if it increases in speed, even if it was going the same speed, it would kind of zoom out more. But that's sort of latitude nerd. That's sort of a like geography nerd. This is sort of a, I can't remember what it's called, a meridian style map, where the distances get like are not really to scale, but it makes it flat. So like you can see like all the surface area, even though like the north extreme and the south extreme are more exaggerated. But that also causes an artificial increase in vector when it's moving in a north direction. All that stuff is advanced stuff. You can kind of just throw that out of your mind. But it's like if you've studied maps when you were a kid, you probably are like, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, nerds. What can you say? So let's look at the key here. So the probability of tropical force winds. Basically a 1 minute of basically on a 1 minute interval, you'd have an average of greater than 39 mile an hour winds, right? Greater than or equal to. For all tropical cyclones. So they're only measuring things of tropical systems on this map. They're not taking into account like random wind things from other systems like nor'easters or anything like that. They're just focusing on tropical systems. The O is indicative of the center of the system they're tracking, which in this case is Durain. It's not always a hurricane throughout all these maps. You'll notice that the name changes from tropical storm to hurricane, and then it goes north and it's still a hurricane. So that's really the only indication. And let me note this. That's really the only indication you have of how intense the system is. This map is not good at determining whether you're looking at a Cat 5 or a Cat 1 or a Cat 3. Because as you can see, it's like, well, okay, it's obviously weak here because there's not a lot of purple. Oh, but it's getting stronger. Look at all this purple. But you'll notice that the purple is condensing, but it's actually getting stronger, but it's moving slower. So that's actually more strong. But then as it moves north, you'll notice how big this purple gets. It's huge. Look at all this purple. That's a lot of purple. But that doesn't indicate that the hurricane is strengthening. It's actually weakening. The only difference is that the vector is speeding up, for one. Number two, as I said, the meridian-style latitude system is causing an expansion of distance, an illusion of greater distance traveled, even though it's moving not as fast. But causes the expansion of the 5-day system to expand out even further. But at the same time, like, it's still weakening as a hurricane, but it's also less predictable on where it's going to go. So their models are saying, like, the probabilities are more spread out on an eastward-westward direction. At least that's what I'm assessing from this. But I've been looking at this for like several hours now, so a person who's just like, yeah, give me to it straight, Doc, isn't going to go into that much detail as to like what's going on here. But I'm just going into the sort of the extremes of what this map is sort of telling me without really telling me, right? But unfortunately, so basically what the colors here mean, and we got back to the colors here, is basically probabilities. So translucent is basically less than 5% chance. Dark green is a 5 to 10% chance. Light green is a 10 to 20% chance. And if you recall when I showed you that die earlier, when I said rolling a 1 on a dice, on a 6-sided die, is 16.66%. That is that light green, that is that solid green area. So basically, it's not the dark green, it's not the yellow green, it's like the plain vanilla green. That means that there is a 1 in 6 chance, right? That it's in that zone of a 1 in 6 chance of happening. It's not never going to happen, it's just unlikely to happen. And what you'll notice is as we're watching this, all the maps here, is that, that Alabama is never touched by anything other than that light green, than that solid green color. It never goes over that 20% chance threshold, which if we're talking about what the president said on Twitter about more than likely, right? Never mind, it does get hit by the light green a little bit. So that's like 20 to 30%, which is still not more than 50%. It's still not more than likely to be impacted by the hurricane, right? Even at the most generous proportions, right, of probability. See, the reason that the president's confused here is he's seeing this as everything in that area is going to be impacted, period. That's what he's seeing here. He is seeing what is called the alarmist side of the things. That if it's even slightly possible for something to happen, it will happen. He's seeing this as a Doppler radar style of map. And I think the reason he's confused is because he's not reading what the map is saying. He's like, oh, look how big that's getting. Oh, there's a lot of purple there. Oh, look how intense. Oh, it's even getting stronger when it's hitting the north. It's like, no, that's not what it's saying. Because you're not reading what the map is saying. So I'm going to take this map here and I'm going to pause for a second. So we're going to stop when it approaches Sunday. So we're at Saturday right now at 2 p.m. I'm going to move forward a few ticks. So this is Sunday at 8 a.m. This is the one that this is the latest map that Donald Trump would have had before having his tweet. As you can see, at that point, Alabama is in with the 5 to 10% range. This is even less likely than a die roll, okay? And let's go over that right now. What is that like? What is the probability? Going back to our die example. I'm going to take this map down for a second. What is the probability of this storm even having tropical winds of 40 miles per hour? Which, by the way, as weather systems goes, 40 miles per hour is pretty solid, but it's not anything to write home about. Like, we've all dealt with windy days every once in a while where, winds will impact your home. And, most homes are designed to withstand 40 mile per hour winds. If your home isn't, then I really apologize, but you should probably, slap the person with a trout, whoever designed your house. It's not anything to evacuate over, basically. It's not anything to hunker down and pray to God for, right? It's not anything that should require God's presence, really. That's if you were in the frickin' Bermudas, or the Bahamas. I'm sorry, not the Bermudas. It's close to the Bermudas, but whatever. So what is that like? What is the odds between less than 10% on dice? So you can't do that with one die. You need 2 die, okay? You need 2 dies to do this. And basically, In order to get less than 10%, there's basically two values. You can roll a 2 or a 3 on these dice. On these two die, right? You want to roll a 2 or a 3. Anything else, it doesn't happen. So basically, you get snake eyes, 1, 1. You get a 1 and a 2 or a 2 and a 1. Those are the only times where it would experience, once again, tropical force winds. Okay? So let's do a little experiment right now. I'm going to roll these dice, and unfortunately I'm going to do it in furry paws, so it's probably going to be... I experimented this, but it was with my human hands. You know what? We're taking the human hands. We're taking the gloves off. We're taking the gloves off. We're going to roll some dice, okay? I don't want to dump it all over the thing and waste your time any more than this, because this is going to take probably a little while, all right? So we're going to roll these two die, all right? We're going to roll these two die. I'm taking the gloves off. So here's what we're after. We're after snake eyes. We're after a 1 with a 2. Where's the 2? There's the 2. Here's the 2! All right? Or we have to turn this back to a 1 and turn this to a 2. Those are the only 3 scenarios in the dice that Alabama will suffer, that will most likely suffer from hurricane force winds. All right? All right? Those are the only 3 options. Because those combined things is about 8%. All right? 5 and a 4, no. 1 and a 4, no. 2 and a 2, close, but no. Hey, snake eyes. Well, that was quicker than I expected, but still, it's not common. It's not more than likely. It took me 6 rolls there to do that. And if you think about if you did this over and over and over again, like, it would take a long time, right? It would take quite a bit of time to do that. And as you roll the dice and you go, well, if this is what the president considers more than likely, is rolling a 3 or a 2 on 2 die, then I think I know why his casinos failed, right? It's like, if you're shooting craps and you're voting, snake eyes is very likely to happen, or rolling a 1 and a 2, rolling a 3 or a 2, man, you should put all your money down on that. Then you're not a good gambler, because you're not, obviously it all has to do with probability, but there's probability is more likely you're going to roll a 7, right? In fact, rolling a 7, just a pure 7 on a die, this is funny trivia, okay? Remember when I said rolling a 1 on a single die is 16.666%? Rolling a 7 in any combination is actually also 16.666%. So, but it's actually more common than rolling any other number. So, probability is interesting. You should go look at it sometime. But clearly here, when we're talking about what the president said here in this tweet about the likeliness of Alabama, being impacted by this system, and basically what the statistics of this actually says, we clearly have a discrepancy. Why is this not clicking? Why are my window captures not working? Is it because I reduced it? Ah, okay. I learned something new. We all learn something new every day. Apparently, if I minimize the window capture doesn't work. So I'm basically window capturing the website right now. So basically, the president's saying Alabama's more than likely to get hit real hard, and it's not even 5%. Now, to be fair, when Donald Trump left for his golfing expedition on Friday, it was more in the light green range. It was in the greenish range. It was more closer to maybe rolling a 1 out of 6. But as I said, even at its most generous, the term more than likely or most likely is greater than 50%. Any sane, rational human being, when taking the term, the weasel words of most likely in any context, will interpret it as a greater than 50% chance. In fact, probably most humans, more than likely, will consider it greater than 60 or 70. Most likely. Like, I guess that, like, I really would like some scientists to go out there, like, amongst the people and go, when you hear the most likely, like, what do you think it's greater than? And they'll give it, like, a percentage of 0 to 100%, right? And when you say when something is most likely to happen, what do you think is the percentage that it's greater than? And I think most people would say greater than 70%. I think most people would say greater than 70% chance, probably even greater than 80%. Like, at the bare minimum, I don't think anyone would go less than 50. Because at that point, it's a coin flip. It's like it will happen or it won't happen. It's basically a binary thing. And at that point, if it's 50-50, it's not most likely. It's either it will or it won't. And it's sort of even. And anything less than that, it's like absolutely it's not more than likely to happen. It's more likely not to happen. So no, under English, under science, under any sense of principle, this tweet is factually incorrect. The NOAA statement here might tell you the truth about the situation, about the maps in a somewhat chided way, but to say that the president's original tweet about hurricane impacts on basically Alabama is entirely and unequivocally false on its face. And anybody in the weather systems know this. Anybody knows this. But the question is that the NOAA is saying that their maps are flawed and that the president misinterpreted their maps. Maybe the question here is if Donald Trump got this map wrong and read this map wrong, what if the common people are reading this map wrong? Which to a scientist is more important, right? And you know, scientists might roll their eyes and go, well, it's a user problem. It's not our problem. We're presenting everything there, clear as black and white, clear as crystal. He loses. Good day, sir. But the question is there something that could be updated to the map to improve its readability to the average individual about what the actual impacts of the hurricane are? And I present to you, yes, that there actually might be. And I did what Donald Trump did. I am sorry. I took a Sharpie and I wrote something on one of these maps. Here's the map we looked at in depth earlier, the one that Donald Trump had before it, and I drew a Sharpie. I took a Sharpie, or MS Paint, and drew a circle around the circle, which indicates the center of the hurricane. I call this the sphere of influence of the system. The tropical influence center, as it were. Basically, at the time this map is taken, and within that circle, there is any probability that currently, right now, as we're talking, as this map is being printed, that these guys are experiencing tropical force winds with the probabilities listed below. But there's caveat to obviously where this circle doesn't help is that you'll notice that the purple on sort of the west side is kind of stretching out that way because the vector is still a thing. This map's entire purpose is to tell you the vector of the things. But basically at this point it tells you, this circle, what I believe helps with is indicating that here is what's being impacted now. Anything outside this circle or even some of the colors inside the circle really are more about the vectors of the system. Where, you know, the scientists might have went, well, that point sort of points that out. Like that little white circle we put there helps you tell that that's where the system is. But it's like, but then you're not really telling them where the system's actually sort of impacting at the current moment. Instead, somebody reading that is like, they see that dot and they're like, oh man, look at all that system impact. Look at all the impact that it's having on these things, because that's what we're used to seeing with those colors. Or you could have some congenital thing where it's like actually showing the probabilities of tropical force winds within that sphere of influence. But I'm not going to tell you to go crazy with this. This is just a simple like thing to show people who might not be well versed in these kind of maps to kind of tell what is going on with it, rather than that way the president's like, oh my God, Alabama's being impacted by this hurricane. It's like, no, there's a 5% chance that they'll experience tropical force winds. Calm your tease, man. Obviously, like, it's kind of concerning that we have a president who can't read maps or can't read like maps like this, because what happens what happens if America were to get into a war? Like, those maps are even more complicated and even more you know, not an exact science. You know, like we have information about intel about like where enemies are and where we're going to be moving the troops and all that. And this is just weather. Yeah, I mean it's concerning, right? But let's take a look at some other examples because that one's sort of a zoomed in one, and it's sort of like that. But here's an example of it when it's a tropical system out in the thing. As you can see, the sphere of influence, it's still rather large, but it's like it's zoomed out, so you can't really. It's pretty large, but as you can see, like it sort of shows that the system's motion. It sort of enhances the idea that the things outside of there are a vector for the system. And vector means, I don't know if I explained this or not because I probably used that word a few times. It's basically speed and direction, right? How fast is it moving in what direction? That's called a vector. Those two things together are called a vector of something. So here we have the last map, and I chose this map for two reasons. Number one is to highly emphasize how that the largeness of purple is not. That has nothing to do with the intensity, because at this point when we're looking at this snapshot, the intensity change is actually going to be decreasing over time. So interestingly, like while these maps sort of help with the vectors and like showing like where the vector of damage might be, it doesn't give a change in intensity, right? It doesn't show the change of intensity of the storm over time. And I think that that's what Donald Trump was confused about, because this looks far more intense than any of the other things, because there's a lot of purple on this map. But in fact, the hurricane is actually lowering in intensity at this point. The second reason I wanted to show this map is this is the map in which the point of the hurricane comes closest to Alabama. And as you can see at this point, it is not touching Alabama whatsoever. To explain this in a way that Donald Trump might understand is this is sort of like the stock market, right? And projections over time. And I'm going to go back to the actual one in motion, and we're going to go back in motion for a little bit. As I said, this is a lot of going over stuff, but I think it's very important to kind of go over all this stuff. Because like obviously, you know, I'm like nerding out about stuff and talking about this kind of stuff and passing knowledge to people. It's sort of like the stock market, right? There's a bunch of analysis going on with, like, let's say this company is like Meme Incorporated, right? Like this dot is the Meme Incorporated, and it's on the stock market, and it's like, okay, well, we predict that the stock's going to go this way or that way over the next course of the things. And taking a picture or a snapshot at any day and then predicting what it's going to do 5 days in the future isn't really something that the stock market has gotten really great at. But what we do have is like analysis saying that, well, this company is making great strides and making great improvements to their efficiency and productivity and things like that. Or this company is doing some shady things, right? And so people make predictions or hedge their bets based upon where they think things are going to go or where they're not going to go. Basically what we see here is that, oh, well, a few models maybe have it going like over here, like very, very, like maybe like one or two analysts out of like 100 analysts say, well, you might have some wind in Alabama, right? And Donald Trump's tweet is basically taking that idea and expanding it to the point where it's like, oh man, and I read this one article on this one paper from this one analyst that says that there might be some, like the stock market impact this thing, and it actually doesn't end up doing that, right? And let's say that one person who said that is trusted, but like everyone else is saying something else, right? And they're equally trusted. This is sort of what this map is sort of doing. It's sort of saying, here's all the vectors we have, and based on all the vectors we have, here's the probability of its motion that's going to have tropical storm impacts. That's what the map's designed for. I think I've went over this multiple times. I hope I'm not being too redundant. But at the end of the day, I think that that's it. So I think that we can use a moment of ignorance in order to improve our things. And I think that in putting this sort of circle on these maps to indicate Like that this is where the system is having probable impacts right now. I don't know how scientific this is. I'm not a scientist. The only two rules I have for the circle are as follows. The tropical influence circle basically indicates is designed by two things. I barely made two basic assumptions on it. That the circle is concentric with the center of the system on the map, and that the edge of the circle is tangent with the 5% probability line. So basically those are the two rules that my circle generates. I don't know whether that's scientifically accurate or not. But as I said, I took one course in Oswego State meteorology, so or not meteorology, but weather. Not even going into the deep sciences. So, like, take it as it were. But I think it makes it more readable to a person to sort of show the outer bounds of the impact zone of the hurricane here, and then that way it kind of indicates more that the things on the outside are that. If you notice on the one picture I had of the tropical thing, I actually had even a thing explaining to the thing of what it was. The black circle denotes the sphere of influence of the system, denoted by O at the point of the preceding made, blah, blah, blah. What I'm not saying that you do is take the tropical influence circle and call it the Trump idiot circle. I'm not telling you to do that. You call it always when you're in front of anybody else, when you're in front of the government and all that other stuff, you call it the tropical influence circle. Okay, you don't call it the Trump idiot circle. Don't do that, because he won't like it and he'll get angry at it. And so whenever you're around Donald Trump, just say tropical influence circle. Okay, you hear me, meteorologists? You hear me, map makers? Don't name it after Trump. Okay. I mean, we're all ignorant, all right? We all have ignorances, and that's the sort of thing that I kind of like always look for in things. Is like, why did this person make this mistake? And if this person made this mistake, could it be possible that others make the similar mistake? Donald Trump made a mistake in reading the map. That is the truth of the matter here. Donald Trump made a mistake reading this map, and he's holding on to that mistake because he believes that the way he interpreted it is correct. It is basically what is called the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Where it's like, this is what I thought the map means, and this is my thoughts were right at the time I made the thoughts, right? So, like, because somebody tried to explain the map to him, it didn't quite fall through, etc., etc. If it is one person I'm disappointed in right now, it's actually not Donald Trump. If anyone's followed my Twitter thing, you'll know that I've given a particular personality, political or a popular scientific figure, some sass over some of the tweets he's made over the past few months. But it's his lack of tweet, or the tweet that he made as a response to this situation, that has me the most disappointed in this person. Like the thing is, like, I liked Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like my life story is a series of having heroes that I'm like, oh man, this person's pretty cool, and then I ended up being disappointed in them, right? Like that's if there's a story of my life, it's like, oh man, I idolize this person. This person's like, he's bringing science and things to the general public. He's talking about it. He's making it so that it's interesting and engaging and things like that. And then, like, they let you down, and you're like, why? So the reason I'm disappointed in Neil deGrasse Tyson here is that he is an employee of, like, NASA, right? And NASA and the National Oceanic Association Administration, I think that's what NOAA means. I'm not quite sure. I was trying to avoid saying it and making myself look ignorant, but hey, we're exposing all of our ignorances here. The NOAA, basically, the National Oceanic Administration, right? I don't know what the second A means, but basically, NASA and them work together because obviously you have to understand the planet's systems and how they're functioning in order to be able to launch things into space and all that stuff. So, like, Neil has some power here. Neil has the power to say to the NOAA, no, what you just did there was defend ignorance. No. And by the way, whenever Neil is faced with a situation in which some Hollywood person or some regular person has ignorances and sciences, he will beat it. He even did this tweet where after the shootings in El Paso and in Dayton, Ohio, he basically like said, well, it's more likely that you'll die at a hospital than being shot in the head at a Walmart. And it's like, man, someone get this guy a Nobel Prize. Oh my God. Oh, I would have never have known that you're more than likely to die in a hospital than in a Walmart. I mean, typically when I go to Walmart, I don't like go there to die or anything. But if I'm going to a hospital, it's probably because my body's not doing too hot or something weird's going on. And so more than likely I might die in a hospital. Oh, medical errors. Oh, how do you know? What was the prognosis of all the people that had medical errors at the time, Neil? Where's the data? They're just numbers here. Like, all I'm seeing is more likely to die in a hospital than in a mass shooting at a Walmart. Man, that's great scientific knowledge right there. That really helps this period of time. Now, obviously, everyone on the internet gave the man sass about this. He ended up apologizing for not understanding the human emotions and stuff like that, which is really a silly apology. It's like, dang it, you bloody Vulcan. It's like Dr. Bones is like, there, dang it, bloody Vulcan. People need some morale boosting, and here you come with your bloody statistics and numbers. And it's like, so Neil is not afraid to bludgeon people with scientific knowledge in order to try and deal with adverse situations when it happens to the common man. But what was his response to this? Well, the only tweet I saw on Neil deGrasse Tyson's thing at this moment in time is something about the bicycle principle, where you keep pedaling forward so you don't fall over. And it was made after the NOAA made their statement, okay? So I can only interpret this in one of two ways. And actually I can only really interpret it in one way. And that is, he's telling the scientists in the NOAA to keep pedaling forward in spite of their boss throwing them under the bus for Donald Trump's ignorance. And to me, I asked Neil, if that is what you made that tweet for, shame on you. Shame on you, Neil. Shame on you. Every time you say the word Galileo, I hope you feel a tinge of guilt. Because if Galileo were in your position right now, and he made a statement like that, or made no statement at all, he wouldn't be Galileo. Because Galileo is like, no, the sun is in the center of the universe and the earth moves around it, you stupid, ignorant people in power. Put me in jail. If questioning the great leaders of this country's scientific belief that the earth is the center of the universe is going to land me in jail, lock me up, throw away the key. Because I'm right and you're wrong. I don't care. I've studied this stuff my whole life. You've just sat in your little comfortable little chair and just went, yeah, you do all the work for me, I'll take all the credit for it. Freaking nerds. Like, this is, and you know, I kind of can't blame you too much, Neil, for this, because obviously if you question the president here, you could possibly lose your job, possibly lose funding for your organization. It's the bicycle principle. Keep moving forward and smiling and going, yeah, please just keep giving us money. I don't want to rock the boat. Rock the freaking boat. If this president is so shallow that he would come after you and the NOAA for criticizing him for saying that it was more than likely going to happen when it was less than 10% chance, then you have given up on science. This is the reason you're losing the climate battle. This is the reason you're losing the climate change battle, is you're giving up the weather. The weather, for crying out loud. The weather wasn't political before this moment. The weather was not political. Like, it was basically how you break the ice in conversation. Hey, how's the wife and kids doing? Oh, they're doing all right. Hey, how's the weather? Oh, it's a bit hot for me. I don't know, man. Like, you're giving up the weather? You're giving up the weather. Good luck on the climate. Bill Nye, can you go drive over to Neil's house, with a pair of safety goggles, hand them over to Neil, tell him to put it on, take off your glove, and slap him across the face? And go, safety glasses on, motherfucker. What is wrong with you? This is a disgrace. I expect more from our scientists in America. I expect our scientists to rise up and go, no, you ignorant ass, you couldn't read the damn map. Admit to it, shut the hell up, or we're moving to another freaking country, and the last time that happened, you mother effer, those countries lost the war. World War II, you're familiar with it, Donald Trump? Oh yeah, I heard you read Mein Kampf or something. That's a rumor. I don't know whether it's true or not. But maybe if you could ask Hitler one question. It's like, should you F with the scientists? I think the answer to that question is no, you don't F with the scientists. You don't do that. You don't take the people who work their ass off day in, day out, and tell them that they're wrong because you're a good guy. You're the guy who's just I'm gonna take credit for all the good things that other people have done for this country. The reason other people have done good for this country is business people look for solutions that make our lives easier. Scientists work their arse off to be able to predict the natural systems of our planet. We have all this to thank for the hard work and due diligence of it, and then we have people who take credit for those things. Instead of understanding their ignorances and going, oh, you know, I misread that map. My apologies. I will be sure to defer to the experts from now on, as most presidents do. How many times have you remembered that President Obama would say, oh, well, I'm going to just off the cuff put on this tweet here about this system. He would basically people who are great leaders will defer to the people who have more information than they do. You should look for that. You should look for them giving credit where credit is due. You should look for them appreciating and having and praise for the people who put in the time and effort to do the work. Because if we're only, and this is to the Trumpites too, because if you only praise people like Donald Trump who siphon the work that other people do for him and take the full-on credit for the work that they do for him, then you are siphoning your own legacy. You are asking our leaders to siphon all that hard work that you do and pull it away so that they can take credit for himself. Have you ever felt underappreciated at work? Not appreciated at work. People like Donald Trump are the reason why. Period. End of story. These people at the National Weather Service and the NOAA worked their arses off that weekend because the hurricanes don't take a day off. Hurricanes don't take Labor Day. Nature's on strike against humanity, and she will strike humanity if you turn your back on it. She works 24/7, 7 days a week. She doesn't care if you want to play golf. And certainly, Mr. President, you weren't going to play golf in Mar-a-Lago that weekend. At least you're that smart. At least you know that much. But when it comes to like these things that you don't know, it's okay to defer to other people. It's okay for other people to take the credit once in a while for the hard work that they do. And I know you don't believe in that because you've shown plenty of evidence that you won't even compensate, party caterers or whatever. But America should be better than that. Neil should be better than that. It's so easy, Neil deGrasse Tyson, to point at emotional people, at the masses, at the public masses, and say, the public masses are ignorant. It's much harder to do when that ignorance is personified in one individual that has a lot of power and has power over you. But when that time came, Galileo made his stand. And he didn't care whether that one person who was ignorant was in power. Because the point is that if you allow individuals who are in a position of power to be ignorant, then the masses who follow that leadership will also believe that it is okay to be ignorant as long as you have the power to do so. And it will only increase ignorance over time. Make your stand here, Neil, and scientists like you, or we are boned. Humanity is boned. The United States is boned. Everybody is boned. Stand up, be Galileo, or never ever say that man's names from your lips again because you are doing him a disservice. Thank you everybody for watching. Have a good week.